Hello everyone and welcome back to Cooking with Ken. Chef Mark here, and I'm very excited today to be making a Beurre Blanc sauce. Now this sauce is not of course going to be consumed by itself. That would be incredibly unhealthy with the copious amounts of butter we're about to use. But we are going to be serving this with fillets of salmon, some herb roasted potatoes, and grilled asparagus. Starting with the potatoes, here in my bowl, I've got a medley of potatoes, white, red, and purple, all about to get tossed with some olive oil. There's herbs in here. We've got parsley, dill, and some garlic that's been minced. Going to drizzle a little oil on there. Season with salt and pepper. Your potatoes very well tossed. We want everything as coated as possible. Now these are going to go onto a pan. Let's pour those out into my sheet tray. And I've got the oven preheated at 425 degrees. Again, this is a convection oven, meaning there is a fan rotating, circulating air in the oven. If you are not using a convection oven, you will want your temperature to be at 450 degrees instead. We're going to go right in. These will take about 15 to 20 minutes to get nice and crispy for us. Now, while my potatoes are in the oven cooking, I'm going to get started on my Beurre Blanc. The very first thing I need to do is reduce some white wine. I've got that right here, bread and butter Chardonnay. I chose this one because, as the name implies, you've got great notes of butteriness, and there's also some nice mild oak, a little sweetness, and I think that's going to balance the added acidity of the lemon juice we're going to add at the end very well. I'm going to start with about 3/4 cups to a cup of white wine. And get that started on high heat just to get a roiling boil started. Once I've come to a boil, that's going to reduce to a simmer so that the ingredients I have in my saucepan here, I've got 1 teaspoon of black peppercorns and about 2 tablespoons of chopped shallot. And after this wine has come to a boil and I reduce it to a simmer, that simmer is going to help really pull out the flavors of the shallots and black peppercorns, help them better permeate the dish and the sauce as a whole. Now, while I'm waiting for that, I've got another pan right here, my grill pan. I'm going to get kicked on to medium-high heat for some asparagus. There's that rolling boil I was looking for, and I'm just going to reduce my heat to low and let that simmer. And with how much wine we started out with, we're going to dramatically reduce this. This is going to reduce to about 2 tablespoons of liquid by the time we're done. That's why it's going to, be a very lengthy process. That's why I started it early. And with Beurre Blanc sauce specifically, it's a sauce that you will serve immediately. You're not really going to be able to save this, heat later, and have because of the nature of butter and how it likes to break and separate. So for that reason, it is imperative that you begin your wine reduction as soon as possible, unless you're trying to wait all night for dinner to be served, in which case, live your life. Now, a pan for my asparagus should be hot enough. I'm going to just handful at a time. Whoops. If I can hold them. Just get these drizzled with some oil. Generous helping of salt. Let those get to sizzling. Now, our asparagus is a fairly dense vegetable. It's going to take about 5 to 7 minutes for me to get this cooked to my liking. It's been about 2 minutes. I'm going to check for grill marks. Nah, not really apparent. And really, that's all I'm looking for, to flip them. I'm not necessarily trying to cook them much more beyond that, because as they continue to sit and stay hot, that steam will continue to cook the asparagus, break down that really fibrous texture that it has. So there's no need to overcook this. Everything smells amazing in here. So asparagus, as beloved as it is is also considerably pricey, and the reason for that being I learned just a year ago that asparagus takes about 3 to 7 years to actually, well, bear asparagus. Otherwise, you're just having these ferns and ferns of asparagus plants for long periods of time. In addition to asparagus taking so long to grow, you've also got the harvesting of it. Asparagus spears do not all grow in unison as many other fruits do, so they're harvested by hand and often individually. So you can have some giant like tractor coming and mowing down all of the asparagus plants and you have this huge yield of asparagus. That's just not how it works. So until such a time as we can find a more convenient means of propagating this vegetable and harvesting, it's gonna continue to be pricey, and now you know why, and it's kind of justified. There we go. And these are getting some very nice marks on them. It's always a bit of a task to work with round objects on a flat surface, especially grilling. It never wants to stay upright. Just wait for these other sides to be marked, take these off, grill the last of my asparagus, and we'll be moving on. Asparagus is looking good and done now. It's time to get it out of the grill pan, make room for my last few spears, and we can get started on our salmon. Gorgeous. I'll kill the heat for this last bit. The residual heat in the cast iron pan is going to be more than enough to mark and finish off my asparagus. In a few minutes, I'll pull that off and we'll transition into fish finally. All right, looks like our potatoes are ready to come out and they are beautiful. Golden and crisp. Let me just try one here. That is so good. You've got that sort of McDonald's fry consistency of that really crisp exterior, and it's all smooth and silky soft inside when you crunch through it. Love that. All right, that's it for my asparagus. Our Beurre Blanc, you see, well, the wine at least, is still reducing, still simmering. We're about halfway there. We've got still a little more ways to go, but hopefully by the time I'm done with my fish, we're just about there. With my fish, as with anything you've heard me talk about on here, start with a hot pan, medium-high heat. Now this is going to be particularly essential for us because I'm cooking these salmon with skin still on. These fillets, you want them when the skin is on to get really crispy, otherwise it's very soggy and mushy when you chew it. It's just not palatable, not something desirable. So, ripping hot pan. And whenever you're getting your fish fresh from the market, be sure you thoroughly look it over. I had to, earlier, remove some scales that were still clinging to my salmon. Nothing terrible, but nothing I wanted to have surprised me when I bit into it later. You can find scales, possibly pin bones, and you can do all of this by really just running your hands over the surface of the fish. Should be completely smooth. Same deal with the pin bones where the fish is meaty. Just run your fingers all over at the top. As I'm waiting for my pan to get hot, I'm also going to get my fish seasoned on one side and ready to go. Just a very generous helping of salt. right on the skin, again helping it to get very crisp. We want it very flavorful. Another little tip to take home with you is that you want to make sure your fish is sort of patted dry. It's not that you want dry fish necessarily, just not a very slimy or wet fish going into the pan, because you can encounter issues with sticking. And now my pan's about as hot as I want it to be. Get some olive oil in there. You can see an immediate smoking. Because the salmon is still technically wet, there's going to be splatter of the oil. It doesn't burn that badly. Do not flinch and accidentally drop your pan. You're in control. It's not really hurting you. Just lay the fish in and let it do its thing. And now when cooking fish, we like to, because again, we want that really nice crisp finish on the skin, we're going to let the majority of the cooking happen on just one side, the skin side. I'm going to try to cook this fish a little over halfway through on one side and then flip it for just a minute on the other. And if you're concerned about how done the fish has to be at home with this salmon, it's recommended about 145 degrees Fahrenheit. You can just insert a thermometer to see, or you can just, cook your fish all the way through, finish in the oven if you want to be careful. But just for your knowledge, to make the most succulent fish we can. 1 minute on the other side. Season our other side. All right, now my fish is ready to turn. You can see on the sides, salmon is very good an example of this. As it cooks, the fish becomes more and more opaque in a very pale, solid color rather than this kind of translucent pink. We're just gonna get our fish spatula under those. Flip. There we go. And I'm actually going to turn my heat off completely. And let this last minute finish the fish off. Now my wine has reduced dramatically as I said it would. I'm gonna go ahead and start whisking butter in here, and we should soon have a finished Beurre Blanc. Now that I have my reduced wine right in front of me, it's time to start adding butter for my Beurre Blanc. Now Beurre Blanc is French meaning butter white or white butter, so it's a white butter sauce. Now my butter I have here is, I've got 8 ounces total, and this has been kept in the freezer. Cold butter is absolutely essential. The butter I have, I started with this, I'm keeping it in the freezer. You want really, really cold butter for this, because I said earlier, when you have this sitting at room temperature going to cold and heating again, that butter, because of the nature of it, will separate on you. And in order to maintain this fine balance of adding cold butter to something hot and whisking it really fast, we want really cold butter to prevent separation as much as possible. There is a trick to fixing that if you encounter it, but we're going to try not to leave room for error today. As you do this, just add a few cubes in at a time. It's good the butter is cold, but it also needs to be slowly added so that we get that really creamy, saucy consistency. Otherwise, we'll just end up with a pot of melted butter and wine. That's not very pleasant. You just whisk and whisk until your butter is completely melted in. Add another few cubes, whisk and whisk. And, wash, rinse, and repeat. Butter I've got on medium heat right now, and I'm just slowly adding and whisking in butter. It's an imperative tool, the whisk. You don't want to be doing this with a rubber spatula, just letting the butter melt. Whisk, as you can see by its kind of balloon shape, aerates. So whenever you're whisking something, you're incorporating air, and this whisking is actually helping our butter to stay stable and not separate into a liquid fat with the liquid wine sitting on top. But actually, that would be on the bottom. Liquids sink beneath oil, yeah. More dense. You can see I've got a really nice creamy sauce starting up. And it really doesn't look like much for how much butter I've added. I had mentioned earlier in passing that there is a trick to fixing a broken Beurre Blanc. And you would use heavy cream, but similarly to our wine today, you would reduce that heavy cream. You couldn't add just regular heavy cream, it has to be reduced and thickened, and that will restore the creaminess to the sauce. However, it's also worth noting that you can only do this once. If your sauce breaks again after that, it's done. So yeah, take your time with it, work slowly, you're in the comfort of your own home. And my Beurre Blanc is all done. All I'm going to do now is pass through the strainer to separate the peppercorns and shallots. I just want to hit this with the juice of half a lemon over the strainer as not to get any seeds in it. Pinch of salt. And now, oh yes, that is delicious. It's so smooth, so silken, and you just got that hint of lemon, that acid on the back of the tongue to finish all that out so you don't have this overly strong fatty presence in your mouth. Contrasts very nicely. Can't wait to put this on the fish. Finish with a little chive. Now it's time for the chef to try it. Oh, there we go. That is so good. Just the creaminess of that butter sauce with the already fattiness of the salmon and that crispy skin out of here. These potatoes are so crispy. Just a very slight char on the asparagus. Just a little kind of smoke to elevate. This has been absolutely delicious. I'm gonna pour a glass of Chardonnay to enjoy with this. And we'll be seeing you all next time. Remember to like and subscribe. Leave some comments below letting us know what content you'd like to see in the future, and we will catch you next time. Now really, where's the wine at?